The rancher gave his last horse to two Apache girls. At dawn, their father came with warriors. The sun had not yet fully risen, but a soft golden light was beginning to stretch across the dry plains. The land seemed endless, a mixture of brown and green, with tall grasses swaying in the gentle morning breeze. In the distance, rugged hills rose like silent guardians, their rocky faces glowing faintly under the early light. On this quiet landscape, a small ranch sat alone, a cluster of weathered wooden buildings surrounded by a few fences and a corral. The ranch had seen better days, but it was home, a home filled with memories, hard work, and a stubborn sense of pride. The rancher, a man in his late 40s, had lived on this land for most of his life. His hands were rough and calloused from years of labor, his skin weathered by the relentless sun, and his eyes carried a mix of kindness and quiet determination. He had lost his wife many years ago, leaving him alone to tend the ranch, manage the animals, and make decisions that sometimes felt heavier than the wide sky above him. His days began before sunrise and often ended long after the last rays of light had faded. Despite the isolation and the constant challenges, the rancher had a reputation among the few neighbors and travelers who passed through. People knew him as fair, honest, and hard-working, someone who would lend a hand if he could, but also someone who expected honesty and respect in return. He didn't have much in the way of luxuries. Life was measured by the number of healthy horses in his corral, the grain stored for the winter, and the quiet moments when he could sit on the porch and watch the wind move across the plains. Among the people who sometimes came to the ranch were two young Apache girls. They were sisters, close in age, with dark hair that fell in straight lines, and eyes that seemed to hold both curiosity and resilience. Their family had suffered losses, leaving them under the watchful care of their father and their older relatives. Despite the difficult times, the girls carried themselves with quiet strength, moving with the natural grace of children who had learned to live with the land and its demands. The girls often came to the ranch to trade small items they had collected or made. Sometimes they brought dried herbs, carefully tied in small bundles, or handcrafted trinkets they hoped might be useful to the rancher. Other times they would help with chores, fetching water, feeding animals, or sweeping the wooden floors of the main house. The rancher had grown fond of them over the years, not just because they were polite and respectful, but because they reminded him of a life that was full of warmth and laughter before loss had made the world feel colder. That morning, the rancher was in the corral with his horses, checking the fences and making sure the animals were ready for the day. His herd had been smaller than usual after a harsh winter, and he felt the weight of each loss deeply. Among all his horses, one stood out, a beautiful, sturdy horse with a coat as dark as night and eyes that gleamed with intelligence and spirit. This horse had been with him for years, helping him with work, carrying supplies, and offering quiet companionship on long rides across the plains. It was more than just an animal. It was a friend, a partner in the solitude of ranch life. As the girls approached, moving quietly along the worn path leading to the corral, the rancher paused and watched them. Their small figures cast long shadows in the early light, and for a moment, the harshness of the land seemed to soften. He knew they were coming for their usual morning visit, but something in their expression told him they were not simply here to help. There was a seriousness in their eyes, a hint of worry that he had learned to recognize over time. He walked toward them, wiping his hands on his worn trousers. "Good morning," he said in a calm voice. Careful not to startle them, the girls nodded, returning the greeting softly. There was a brief silence, filled only by the sounds of the wind, the distant cry of a hawk, and the soft shifting of hooves on dry dirt. The rancher knelt slightly to look at them more closely. "Is everything all right?" he asked. The older sister, her dark eyes wide and earnest, nodded but did not speak immediately. She seemed to measure his reaction, perhaps deciding whether he would understand the unspoken worries that children sometimes carried. Finally, the younger sister spoke. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Father, he says we need help," she said. "The horses, the food, everything is harder now. We are trying, but we need more than we can carry alone." The rancher felt a pang in his chest. He knew the struggles of living off the land, the hardships of survival when resources were scarce. He had seen families like theirs struggling quietly, often unnoticed by those who did not know the land intimately. He also understood the pride that came with their heritage, the careful way they held themselves, the respect in their words, and the unspoken courage in their eyes. He stood up slowly and looked at his last horse, the one he had always relied on. A thought began to form in his mind, one that both scared and inspired him. The horse was everything he had left to rely on, yet the girl's need was real and urgent. He could feel the decision weighing on him like the heavy wooden beams of the barn above. It was not a choice he could make lightly, and yet, in his heart, he knew what he had to do. Walking over to the horse, he gently ran his hand along its mane. The animal nickered softly, sensing his touch and the seriousness of the moment. Turning back to the girls, he smiled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "I have something for you," he said. The girls' eyes widened, and they exchanged a quick glance, sensing the significance of his words. The rancher spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. "This horse, it is my last one. I cannot spare much more, but I want you to have it. You will need it more than I do. Take care of it, and it will take care of you." The older sister's eyes filled with tears, and she stepped forward, reaching out to touch the horse's mane. The younger sister's hand trembled slightly as she did the same. They did not speak at first, overcome by the weight of the gift, the kindness behind it, and the understanding that such generosity was rare in a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving. The rancher watched them carefully, seeing the mix of gratitude, respect, and awe in their faces. He knew this act might bring risks. Others might misunderstand his intentions, or his gesture could be seen as unusual or inappropriate. But he also knew that sometimes doing the right thing required courage. Sometimes kindness meant giving away something precious, even when it was difficult to part with. For a long moment, they simply stood together, the morning light illuminating their small figures, the horse between them like a bridge connecting two worlds. The rancher could feel the quiet understanding growing, a bond formed not just of words, but of shared humanity, of mutual respect, and of the knowledge that even in a land full of challenges, generosity could create something rare and lasting. Finally, the older sister spoke, her voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you," she said.
That day, Damien knew, though God.
"We will care for him, we promise." The rancher nodded, a small smile forming on his face. He could not see the future, and he could not know all the consequences of his decision. But in that moment, he felt a sense of peace. The land was still harsh, the days were still long, and the work would never end. Yet the simple act of giving, of trusting, had created a moment of connection that could not easily be broken. As the girls prepared to leave with their new horse, the rancher watched them disappear along the dusty path, their small forms becoming silhouettes against the rising sun. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of dry grass and the faint warmth of morning. The rancher stood silently, hands resting on the fence, reflecting on the unexpected joy that kindness could bring. Even in a life marked by hardship, the ranch was quiet once more, yet the memory of the moment lingered in the air, like a soft echo of something profound. The rancher returned to his chores, tending to the other animals and preparing for the day ahead, but a lightness remained in his chest, a reminder that even in solitude, generosity could create bonds that connected people across divides, offering hope in ways that words alone could never fully capture. And so, as the sun climbed higher into the sky, painting the plains with gold and shadow, life at the ranch continued, carrying with it the quiet, enduring promise of a gift that could change lives in ways both small and immeasurable. After the morning gift of the horse, the rancher returned to his chores, but a quiet unease settled in his chest. The plains, which had seemed calm and soft under the golden light of dawn, now felt heavier, as if the wind itself carried whispers of events yet to unfold. He could not shake the feeling that his simple act of kindness might ripple beyond the quiet fences of his ranch. The girls he knew had families, neighbors, and traditions that were complex and delicate, and while he hoped the gesture would be welcomed, he also feared misunderstanding. The girls, meanwhile, had left the ranch with careful steps guiding the horse across the soft dirt paths. Their small hands clutched the reins, the weight of responsibility pressing on their young shoulders. They were thrilled, of course, by the gift. But with excitement came worry. Their father was a proud man, a warrior who had guided their family for years. He had always taught them that gifts, especially from strangers or outsiders, must be approached with respect and caution. The girls understood that what seemed like a generous gesture could also be seen differently by others. As they rode through the rolling plains, the girls' minds raced with questions. Would their father be happy with the gift? Would he see it as a sign of goodwill? Or would he think the rancher was overstepping boundaries? The horse moved smoothly under their hands, responding to their gentle guidance, yet the thrill of riding it was tempered by the weight of their thoughts. The older sister, always the more careful of the two, kept a steady hand on the reins and whispered instructions to her younger sister, who was both excited and nervous. Back at the ranch, the man moved among his animals, checking fences and feeding the remaining horses. His thoughts kept drifting back to the girls and the horse he had given them. He worried not only for their safety, but also for his own. He had lived in this land long enough to know that misunderstandings could escalate quickly. What had seemed like a simple act of kindness could, in the eyes of others, be interpreted in many ways. The rancher had learned patience over the years, but today, waiting felt heavier than usual. The morning passed slowly. The sun climbed higher, turning the pale grasses golden and casting long shadows across the land. Birds called from the distant trees, and the occasional coyote's cry echoed faintly in the hills. The rancher worked quietly, but every sound from the horizon drew his gaze, his mind half expecting to see someone approaching. He reminded himself not to fear unnecessarily, yet he could not dismiss the knowledge that life on the plains often demanded caution. Meanwhile, the girls approached the edges of a small creek, where water ran clear and cold over smooth stones. They tethered the horse to a nearby tree to let it drink, and they took a moment to rest themselves. The horse dipped its head into the water, the reflection of its dark coat shimmering on the surface. The sisters looked at one another, sharing a silent conversation. They knew the horse would help them carry supplies, travel more safely, and support their family in ways that nothing else could. Still, they could not ignore the potential consequences of accepting such a gift from a man who was, after all, not part of their people. "We must be careful," said the older sister, her voice quiet but firm. She brushed a strand of hair from her face, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Father will want to know everything. He will come for us if he feels we have been wronged in any way." The younger sister nodded, her fingers nervously stroking the horse's mane. "I know," she said softly. "But he will understand, won't he? The man, he is kind. He gave us this because he wanted to help." The older sister's eyes softened. "I hope so," she said, though her tone held caution. "We cannot know until he sees the horse. We must be ready for anything." As the day continued, the wind began to carry the scent of the land after a dry spell. It rustled the grasses, swept across the small hills, and whispered through the trees near the creek. The girls worked together, brushing the horse and checking its hooves, making sure it was comfortable and healthy. Their care for the animal was meticulous, born not just from excitement but from responsibility. They knew that this horse represented not only freedom and strength, but also trust, a trust placed in them by someone outside their family and their community. The rancher, meanwhile, had begun his midday meal, eating quietly while keeping one eye on the horizon. He felt a mix of satisfaction and worry. He had done what he felt was right, but he knew that in this land, every action had consequences beyond what one could predict. He thought about his own childhood, the lessons he had learned from elders about respect, caution, and understanding the customs of others. He realized that his gesture, however generous, now depended on patience and careful hope. Hours passed slowly, and the shadows grew long across the plains. The sun began to lower in the sky, painting the hills with deep orange and red hues. The girls finally decided to return home, carefully leading the horse along familiar paths. Their steps were deliberate, their minds alert to every sound. They knew that approaching their father would require tact and honesty. They had to show that the gift was accepted with gratitude, respect, and the understanding of responsibility. As they neared their family's dwelling, the girls noticed their father standing outside, his figure tall and commanding against the evening sky. He had always been a man of quiet strength, respected for his wisdom and courage. His eyes, sharp and observing, scanned the horizon as if reading the land itself. The girls felt a mix of relief and nervousness. They had hoped that the horse would be welcomed, but they knew the importance of presenting the situation clearly and respectfully. The father's gaze softened slightly as he noticed the horse. He did not immediately approach, but instead studied the animal, then his daughters. The girls halted a short distance away, letting the horse graze quietly as they prepared to explain. The older sister stepped forward, speaking with calm confidence. "Father," she began, "the man at the ranch, he gave us this horse. He said it is our responsibility now. He gave it because he wanted to help us, and he trusted us to care for it." The father listened, his eyes never leaving the horse, for long. He walked slowly around the animal, examining its strength, its build, and the care with which it had been prepared. Then he turned to the girls, his face calm but serious. "He gave this willingly?" he asked. The older sister nodded. "Yes, father. He said he had few left, and he knew we needed it more. He wanted to help." A long silence followed. The wind rustled the grasses, carrying faint scents of earth and water. The father's expression was unreadable, and the girls could feel the weight of his judgment. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but full of authority. "A gift is a test as much as it is kindness. It tells us who we can trust and who respects the rules of our people. We must think carefully before accepting it fully." The younger sister glanced at her older sister, then back at their father. "We will care for it, father," she said softly. "We will respect the gift and the man who gave it. Please believe us." The father nodded slowly. "I see your hearts are true," he said, "but we must remain cautious. The world is not always kind, even to those who give freely. We will watch carefully, and we will act wisely." "You have done well to come and tell me." The girls felt a mix of relief and pride. Their father's acceptance, even partial, felt like a validation of their judgment and their understanding of responsibility. Yet they could sense that he would not let the matter rest lightly. They would need to prove, through care and respect, that the gift was valued and honored. Meanwhile, the rancher, far away on his quiet land, could not know exactly how the gift was being received. He imagined many possibilities, some hopeful, others tense. But he continued his work with patience, tending to his animals and mending fences, trusting that the intentions behind his actions were clear and true. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, a quiet tension hung in the air. The plains seemed alive with possibilities, both good and uncertain. The girls, their father, and the horse stood together, bound by respect, responsibility, and the quiet understanding that actions, no matter how simple, could ripple across lives in ways that required both courage and wisdom. And so the day ended with a calm yet fragile balance. The gift of the horse had brought hope, joy, and a new challenge. It had also reminded everyone involved that trust, responsibility, and careful consideration were as essential as water and food in the harsh but beautiful world they inhabited. The wind carried the soft promise of the night, and the plains held their secrets as the first stars appeared, sparkling like distant lanterns over the endless land. The first light of dawn had barely brushed the horizon when the quiet of the plains was broken by the rhythmic sound of hooves striking the dry earth. Dust rose in small clouds, shimmering in the early sunlight like faint golden smoke. On the ridge overlooking the ranch, a small group of riders appeared, moving steadily and with purpose. At their center rode a tall, imposing man whose presence commanded attention. It was the father of the two Apache girls, his face calm but determined, his eyes scanning the land with sharp awareness. Behind him were several warriors, moving silently but with unmistakable strength and focus. Back at the ranch, the man worked in the corral, unaware at first of the approaching group. He had been tending to the fences, feeding the horses, and checking on the barn when a faint sound reached his ears, the rhythmic pounding of hooves on hard earth. He paused, squinting toward the horizon. At first he thought it might be a small group of neighbors or travelers, but as the riders drew closer, the outline of the leader became clear. His chest tightened slightly, a mixture of concern and anticipation rising in him. The rancher had lived his life on these plains long enough to recognize the patterns of approach. This was no casual visit. The movement was deliberate, coordinated, and purposeful, and the sight of the father at the front of the group brought a new weight to the moment. The man's mind raced. He remembered the horse he had given to the two girls, his last and most trusted companion. He wondered how the father would interpret his gesture. Would it be seen as a kindness or an intrusion? As the riders approached, the rancher stepped out from the corral, his hands resting on the fence. He met the father's gaze, holding it steadily. The father did not immediately speak, nor did he signal hostility. Instead, he rode slowly, his movements measured, as if reading the rancher's intentions before making any decisions. The warriors behind him maintained a respectful distance, their eyes alert but not threatening. The air between the two men was thick with tension, yet it was a tension built on observation and caution, rather than aggression. The rancher raised a hand in greeting, careful to show openness and respect. "Good morning," he called, his voice calm but firm. "I see you've come early." The father nodded slightly but said nothing. His eyes moved from the rancher to the corral, then back again, assessing the situation carefully. The rancher knew that the father was trying to understand not only the circumstances, but also his intentions. He had learned that, in moments like this, words alone were not enough. Honesty, patience, and respectful action spoke louder than any explanation. The girl's father finally spoke, his voice deep and measured. "I come for my daughters," he said, his eyes still locked on the rancher, "and for the horse they have received." His tone was calm, but it carried the weight of authority and expectation. The rancher swallowed nervously, though he kept his posture steady. "I understand," he replied. "It was given to them because they needed it. I had little left myself, but I wanted to help. I mean no harm, and I hope you will understand my intentions." For a moment, silence stretched across the plain. The wind rustled the grasses, carrying the faint scent of dry earth and morning dew. The warriors remained still, watching and waiting. The father studied the rancher carefully, looking for honesty in his expression, in his stance, in every gesture. The rancher met his gaze without flinching, showing the sincerity that had guided his actions. Slowly, the father dismounted, moving closer to the fence. His daughters appeared from behind the ridge, leading the horse carefully. The girl's eyes were wide with a mix of excitement, fear, and hope. They approached their father with careful steps, stopping a few feet away. The father's gaze softened slightly as he looked at them, then turned to the horse, examining it from every angle. "This horse," he said finally, "is strong and well cared for. I see it has been treated with respect." He turned to the girls. "And you have guided it with care?" The older sister stepped forward. "Yes, father," she said, her voice steady. "We have done everything to care for him. He is ours now because of the man at the ranch, but we will honor the trust he placed in us." The father nodded slowly. He looked back at the rancher. "You gave this gift willingly?" he asked. "Yes," the rancher replied. "I have few left, but I gave it because the girls needed it. My hope was to help them in a way that mattered." The father studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled faintly. It was not a wide or easy smile, but it carried a sense of understanding and quiet approval. "Kindness is rare," he said, "and courage to give what is needed, even at cost to oneself, is rarer still. You have shown both today." The rancher exhaled slowly, relief spreading through him like the warmth of the rising sun. He had feared confrontation, judgment, even anger. Instead, he found respect and acknowledgement. The warriors behind the father relaxed slightly, sensing the absence of hostility. The tension that had hung over the morning began to ease, replaced by cautious hope. The father continued, his eyes scanning the horizon once more. "This gift is not only a test of generosity, but also of understanding. The plains are harsh, and the world is full of decisions that carry consequences. By giving, you have connected yourself to these girls and their family. That connection comes with responsibility, both for you and for us." "I understand," the rancher said quietly. "I only hope that my actions do not bring trouble. I meant only to help." "You have not caused trouble," the father replied. "You have acted with honesty. That is what matters most. But you must know, trust is fragile. Actions have consequences beyond the moment they are made." The girl's younger sister, sensing the seriousness of the conversation, stepped forward and spoke softly. "Father, we will honor this gift. We will care for the horse, and we will respect the man who gave it to us. Please see that he meant only good." The father looked at her, then at the older sister. He nodded, a quiet authority in his expression. "I see truth in your words," he said, "and I see that you understand the responsibilities that come with trust. You are wise beyond your years." The rancher watched the exchange, feeling a mixture of relief and awe. He realized that he was witnessing more than the acceptance of a gift. He was seeing the careful balance of respect, understanding, and responsibility that bound people together in this land. It was a moment of connection, fragile but powerful, between families, cultures, and the shared challenges of life on the plains. The father then turned back to the horse, running a hand along its mane. "He is strong," he said, "and he will serve you well, girls. But remember, the strength of a horse is only as great as the care and respect given to it. You must guide him with wisdom and patience, just as you have been guided by your family." The girls nodded, absorbing the gravity of their father's words. They felt pride and excitement, but also a quiet sense of responsibility. The horse was no longer just a gift, it was a symbol of trust, of connection, and of the careful balance that life required. The father looked once more at the rancher. "You have acted with honesty and generosity," he said. "Know that your actions will not be forgotten. You have earned a measure of respect from my family and my people. But remember, the land is vast, and the world is full of challenges. Trust and care must continue every day in every choice you make." The rancher nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I will remember," he said, "and I will continue to act with respect and care, as I have always tried to do." For a long moment, silence fell over the plains. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light over the hills, the corral, and the small group of people standing together. The horse shifted its weight, sensing the calm but attentive energy in the air. The girls' faces glowed with pride and excitement, knowing that they had been entrusted with something important, and that their father's acknowledgement gave them guidance for the path ahead. Finally, the father mounted his horse once more. He gestured to the warriors to follow. "We will return home now," he said. "But remember, honesty, care, and respect are the pillars of trust. Do not forget them, in any moment, with any choice you make." The riders began their journey back across the plains, leaving the rancher standing at the fence, watching them fade into the distance. Relief, pride, and quiet satisfaction filled his chest. He had faced the tension, the uncertainty, and the unknown, and had come through with respect and understanding on both sides. The morning had begun with uncertainty, but it ended with a fragile but meaningful harmony. The gift had been accepted, trust had been recognized, and a new connection had been forged between the rancher and the girl's family. It was a connection built on honesty, respect, and the shared understanding that life on the plains required both courage and care. The rancher returned to his chores, but the weight in his chest was lighter. He knew that challenges would come, as they always did, but he also knew that moments of understanding, trust, and generosity were worth every risk. The plains stretched endlessly before him, but for the first time in days, he felt a quiet assurance that even in this harsh world, kindness and courage could create bonds that endured beyond the immediate moment, shaping lives in ways both seen and unseen. The days after the horse was given passed quietly at first, but the rancher could not ignore a gentle but constant hum of anticipation in the air. He continued his chores with careful attention, tending to the remaining horses, mending fences, and preparing the small garden he had cultivated over the years. Yet every time he glanced toward the distant hills, his thoughts drifted to the two girls and the horse. He wondered how they were faring, whether they were treating the animal with the care and respect he had hoped, and what their father had truly thought of his gesture. Meanwhile, the sisters had settled into their new responsibility with care and focus. The horse, sturdy and spirited, had quickly bonded with them, responding to their gentle guidance and quiet commands. It became clear to the girls that this was no ordinary gift. It was a living companion that required attention, understanding, and patience. They spent hours brushing its coat, feeding it carefully, and practicing riding together. Each morning they would rise early, the sun barely peeking over the horizon, and guide the horse to water sources. keeping it strong and healthy. Their father watched closely, moving silently among them, observing their movements, their attention to detail, and their understanding of the animal. He had always been a man of quiet wisdom, valuing learning through observation and practice rather than words alone. His approval was not given lightly. When he spoke, it carried weight, and his guidance was respected because it was earned. "Remember," he told them one morning as the girls tended the horse, "strength without care is useless. You must treat him with kindness, patience, and understanding. He will give you strength only if you give him respect in return." The girls nodded, understanding the deeper lesson in his words. This was more than caring for a horse. It was learning about responsibility, trust, and the balance of relationships. They knew that the gift had connected them to the rancher in a way that required vigilance and honesty, and they were determined to honor it. At the ranch, the man worked diligently, though a part of his mind remained with the girls. He wondered how the father's warriors had returned home, and whether the horse had been safely integrated into the family. He reflected on the rare moments of trust and understanding he had witnessed during the encounter. It was not often that someone outside his own family or community had been able to reach such a level of mutual respect with him, and he felt quietly grateful for the chance to bridge this gap. Days turned into a week, and the girls began to take the horse on longer rides across the plains. They explored paths near their home, carefully guiding the horse through narrow trails, across creeks, and over gentle hills. With each ride, their confidence grew, and the bond between the girls and their horse strengthened. The animal, once wary of new surroundings, now followed their guidance willingly, responding to their subtle signals and trusting their judgment. One afternoon, the older sister stopped at the top of a small hill, looking out over the sweeping plains. The wind tugged gently at her hair, carrying the faint scent of earth and grass. She turned to her younger sister, who was brushing the horse's coat, and spoke softly. "Father has shown us that trust is earned through our actions, not words alone. We must show the rancher and ourselves that we are responsible." The younger sister looked up, a smile spreading across her face. "I feel proud," she said. "This horse, it is more than just a gift. It is a reminder of the trust between families, even when the world is wide and uncertain." Back at the ranch, the man noticed subtle signs that the girls' family had been carefully teaching them the lessons of responsibility. He saw distant traces of footprints leading from the ridge toward their home, and occasionally a glimpse of the horse moving gracefully in the open plains. Each sighting reminded him that the gift had not been given lightly, and that its consequences, both joyful and challenging, were unfolding in ways that required patience and care. The father occasionally returned to the ranch himself, not in anger or suspicion, but in quiet observation. He spoke with the rancher, exchanging insights on the care of animals, the rhythm of the land, and the challenges of survival in this vast open world. Their conversations were calm, deliberate, and respectful, filled with the shared understanding that honesty, generosity, and wisdom were the pillars of lasting relationships. One morning, the rancher noticed movement on the horizon, the father returning with a small group of warriors. His heart beat a little faster, but he reminded himself that their visits had been calm and deliberate, marked by respect rather than threat. As they approached, the father called out in a steady voice, "We come to share news and guidance, and to see how the girls and the horse are faring." The rancher nodded, inviting them into the corral area. The girls, now confident with the horse, approached carefully, their faces glowing with pride. They guided the animal to a shaded area, letting it rest while they explained how they had cared for it. The father listened closely, observing not only their words but their tone, their posture, and the evident care in their actions. "You have done well," he said finally, a note of approval in his voice. You have shown that responsibility is not simply about following instructions, but about understanding the weight of your choices. This horse has become a symbol of trust and respect, not just for your family, but for all who share this land with you." The rancher felt warmth in his chest at the father's words. He had given the gift without expecting anything in return, yet now he saw that it had created something far more meaningful, a bridge of respect and understanding between two families. Shaped by the actions of young hearts learning responsibility and the wisdom of elders guiding them, the days continued in this rhythm. The girls learned to ride with skill and confidence, the horse becoming both companion and teacher. The father remained a steady presence, offering guidance without command, teaching lessons through demonstration and example rather than words alone. The rancher continued his own work, his eyes occasionally drifting to the horizon, reassured that his gift had taken root in a way that was positive, meaningful, and lasting. As the weeks passed, small moments of shared joy and mutual respect became common. The girls would sometimes bring herbs or small crafts to the rancher as tokens of gratitude. The rancher, in turn, would offer guidance on animal care or lend small tools to help them with their work at home. Each exchange, simple as it seemed, strengthened the bond between the families, weaving a tapestry of trust, respect, and mutual understanding across the open plains. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the older sister spoke quietly to her father. "We are learning, father," she said. "The horse teaches us patience, care, and responsibility. We see that kindness, when respected, can bring people together in ways we did not imagine." The father nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Yes," he said. "The gift is more than the horse itself. It is a lesson in trust, respect, and understanding. You have shown that you are capable of honoring both the gift and the intentions behind it." The rancher, standing nearby, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. His last horse, once a symbol of his own survival and companionship, had become a bridge of connection. It had fostered trust, built understanding, and created a relationship that spanned cultures and generations. He realized that the consequences of a gift were not always immediate or obvious. Sometimes they unfolded slowly, teaching lessons of patience, care, and respect that lasted far longer than any single act. As the night settled over the plains, the stars appearing one by one like distant lanterns, the girls led the horse back to their home. Their father walked alongside them, offering gentle guidance and encouragement. The rancher watched from his corral, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. The land was still harsh, and challenges would continue to come. But in that moment, he knew that the act of kindness had created ripples far beyond what he could see. Ripples of trust, responsibility, and connection that would shape the lives of those involved in meaningful and lasting ways. The horse, now calm and trusting, moved steadily with the girls, a living symbol of the bond that had been forged. The plains, wide and endless, seemed less lonely, filled with the quiet presence of respect, understanding, and the promise that kindness, when paired with care, could transform lives in ways that words alone could not convey. And so, life continued. The rancher worked his land with renewed purpose. The girls learned and grew with their horse, and the father observed, guiding and protecting the fragile but precious bond that had been created. The gift, simple as it seemed, had become something far greater than any one person or family. It had become a lesson in life, trust, and humanity, unfolding slowly, quietly, and powerfully across the vast and beautiful plains. Word count, approximately 1,310 words. Style, simple English, third person, immersive and engaging. Tone, calm, reflective, tension resolving, culturally sensitive. Content, safe, no violence, no harmful content. I can now expand Part 5, the resolution and reflection, where the story concludes with the long-term impact of the gift and the relationships it created, keeping it moving and satisfying for readers. Do you want me to continue with Part 5? Expand K row without heading 1300 words, in simple English words. It should be interesting, and every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. And don't use any violated word. Aviad any violated content? Absolutely. Let's expand Part 5 into a full, engaging narrative of around 1,300 words in simple English, giving a satisfying resolution and reflection on the story, showing the long-term impact of the gift and the relationships formed. The weeks had passed and the seasons were beginning to change. The wind carried a cooler breath across the plains, rustling the dry grasses and scattering leaves along the gentle hills. The rancher moved about his land with quiet purpose, his hands still strong from years of labor, his eyes calm yet alert to the subtle shifts in the weather and the animals. Life at the ranch had settled into a rhythm, but his thoughts often wandered to the girls and their horse, and the bond that had grown between them all. The girls had become inseparable from their horse, their confidence and skill growing each day. They rode across the plains with ease, guiding the horse over hills and through shallow streams, their laughter mingling with the sounds of the land. The horse had become a teacher, a companion, and a symbol of responsibility. Each morning they rose early to care for him, brushing his coat, cleaning his hooves, and guiding him with patience and kindness. They had learned that caring for another living being was not simply about obedience or control. It was about understanding, respect, and trust. Their father watched them closely, his pride evident in the quiet lines of his face. He had always been a man of careful judgment, valuing wisdom, patience, and courage. He had guided his daughters through many lessons in life, but this gift had offered a new kind of teaching, one that blended trust, generosity, and the importance of bridging worlds. He had seen the rancher act with honesty and courage, and he knew that the children had been given not just a horse, but a chance to grow an understanding of human kindness and responsibility. The rancher on his side of the plains continued his work with a quiet satisfaction. He knew that the gift had created consequences beyond his own land, consequences that were unfolding in ways both beautiful and subtle. He watched the horizon, imagining the girls riding the horse, feeling a sense of connection across the distance. He understood that his gesture had not only helped the children, but had also opened a door to trust, understanding, and shared respect between families who might otherwise have remained distant. One afternoon, the girls returned to the ranch, the horse moving steadily beneath them. Their father accompanied them, as he often did, walking beside them with a calm and careful presence. The rancher greeted them warmly, relief and joy visible in his expression. The horse nickered softly, recognizing the rancher from previous visits, its ears flicking back and forth with curiosity and calm. The older sister spoke first, her voice steady and full of quiet pride. "We have learned so much," she said. "The horse teaches us every day about responsibility and patience. He teaches us to care for another life, to respect guidance, and to understand the value of trust." The rancher nodded, smiling. "And I have learned as well," he said. "Sometimes giving is not just about the gift itself, but about the connections it creates. I have seen that trust and respect can grow in ways that are far more meaningful than we imagine." The father studied both the rancher and his daughters. "You have acted with honesty, care, and understanding," he said, his tone calm but full of authority. "That is more important than anything else. You have shown that kindness, when paired with respect, can create bonds that last longer than any single day, longer than any challenge. The younger sister, her eyes bright, spoke up. "We will honor this gift every day," she said. "We will care for the horse, respect the rancher, and remember the lessons we have learned about trust and responsibility." The father's eyes softened. Good," he said. "Remember, life is full of choices. Each choice carries a lesson, a consequence, and an opportunity. You have learned well, but the journey continues. Trust, care, and respect must be renewed every day." Over the following months, life on the plains continued in its steady rhythm, but the presence of the horse had created subtle but meaningful changes. The girls grew stronger, more confident, and wiser in their actions. They learned to anticipate the horse's movements, understand its moods, and guide it with gentle authority. They also learned the importance of teamwork, as the care of the horse required cooperation, patience, and consistent effort. The rancher, too, noticed changes in himself. He found satisfaction not just in his work on the land, but in the quiet knowledge that his actions had created a ripple of trust and respect. He realized that his generosity had strengthened bonds between families, teaching lessons that could not be measured in material terms alone. He understood that life on the plains was not just about survival, but about building connections, fostering understanding, and acting with integrity even when the outcomes were uncertain. The father occasionally returned to the ranch to speak with the rancher, not in anger or suspicion, but in a quiet partnership built on mutual respect. They shared insights about caring for animals, managing the land, and guiding children. These exchanges were calm and deliberate, marked by an understanding that both men were learning from one another. The bond between them deepened, strengthened by honesty, patience, and the shared experience of nurturing responsibility and trust. One late afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the distant hills, the older sister rode the horse to the edge of the ridge, looking out over the endless plains. She felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, a deep understanding of the lessons her father had taught and the experiences she had gained. The younger sister joined her, and together they watched the sun paint the sky with warm colors, the wind carrying the scent of grass, earth, and distant blooms. "This horse," said the older sister softly, "is more than a gift. He is a teacher, a companion, and a reminder of the trust that exists between people when we act with kindness and care." The younger sister nodded. "Yes," she said, "and we have learned that every choice matters, every action counts. Trust is not given lightly, but when it is honored, it creates something beautiful and lasting." The father stood nearby, observing the moment with quiet pride. "You have learned well," he said, "and your actions will continue to guide you. Remember that the lessons of today will help you in the future, in ways you may not yet see. Trust, care, and respect are gifts themselves, and they must be renewed every day." Back at the ranch, the man reflected on the journey that had begun, with a simple decision to give his last horse to two children in need. He had faced uncertainty, concern, and the weight of responsibility, yet the outcome had been far more profound than he could have imagined. The gift had created connections, fostered understanding, and strengthened bonds that would endure beyond a single moment, a single season, or even a single lifetime. As night fell over the plains, the stars began to appear, scattered across the sky like a delicate pattern of light. The wind whispered through the grasses, carrying the quiet promise of continuity and growth. The horse grazed calmly near the girls, their father nearby, and the rancher watching from a distance. Each figure, each action, each moment of care and respect contributed to a larger story. one of trust, responsibility, and the subtle power of generosity. In the weeks and months that followed, the bond between the rancher and the girl's family grew stronger. They shared knowledge, assisted each other with the challenges of life on the plains, and continued to honor the lessons learned from the gift of the horse. The children became symbols of hope and responsibility in their community, demonstrating that even small acts of kindness could create lasting change. The rancher realized that the horse had become more than a gift. It had become a bridge between lives, cultures, and generations. He understood that his simple choice had taught lessons of courage, patience, and integrity, not just to the girls, but to himself and to their father. The trust and respect created by this act of generosity had rippled across the land, reminding all involved that kindness, when paired with care and understanding, could transform ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and pink, the rancher stood at the edge of his land, watching the girls ride the horse in the distance. Their father walked beside them, guiding and observing, while the horse moved steadily beneath their careful hands. The rancher felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a quiet knowledge that his actions had created something meaningful and enduring. The plains stretched endlessly before him, wide and open, yet filled with the invisible threads of connection, trust, and shared responsibility. The horse, the children, and their father had become part of a story that would continue for years, a story of understanding, respect, and the gentle power of kindness. And so, life went on. The rancher worked his land with steady hands and a calm heart. The girls grew with wisdom, courage, and care. Their father guided them, offering lessons in patience and trust, while the horse served as both companion and teacher. The simple act of giving, the gift of the last horse, had become a lasting testament to the ways in which generosity, respect, and understanding could shape lives, forge connections, and create harmony even in the vast and challenging plains of the Southwest. The stars twinkled above that night, a quiet reminder of the vastness of the world, the power of small gestures, and the enduring strength of trust. The plains held their secrets, the horse grazed peacefully, and the bonds between these families continued to grow, quietly, steadily, and beautifully.